I am at home and I am alone.
Thank you. Gwen English.
Gwen English, Planning Board Rep. I am home and I am alone in the room.
Thank you. Pam Jedham.
Pam Jedham, home alone.
Curtis.
Curtis Boyden, Vice Chair, home alone.
All right. And Doug McCallum.
I'm here in my house.
Okay.
Hello.
All right. Thank you. So under new business, the continued public hearing, well, this is now the public hearing. This was a continued discussion on two previous meetings that we've had. This is the application of the Ioka Properties LLC for a change in appearance, including window replacement to the existing structure located at 53 Water Street. The subject property is located in the waterfront district, commercial district, and is tax map parcel 73-34, and this is case number 20-3. So with that, we did ask the applicant to return to this meeting with some additional details that looks like have been provided, complete. So with that, and also the rest of the project as a whole, because we're hoping to come to a decision tonight as a commission, can you please review the application and provide us the new information?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. I'm Sharon Summers. I'm with Donahue, Tucker, and Shindella. I represent the applicants, Ioka Properties LLC. With me tonight are the two owners of the company, David Cowie and Jay Caswell. Also with me tonight are some representatives of Market Square Architecture, Adam Wagner, Christina O'Brien, and Whitney Belton. As the chair has just indicated, we are here tonight following on two work sessions with the commission. The latest one occurred on June 18th, and we feel was a very constructive work session. That work session concluded with a discussion that was had in which we asked for confirmation that the commission was found the overall design and concept to be favorable, including the rooftop, the canopy, the reuse of the letters, and so forth. And that at this point, what was the next step that would be required would be for us to come back and to provide some of the additional information that had been requested, but that in general terms, there was no need for us to go back to the drawing board in terms of any major design issues. So with that, we follow the instructions, and we have come back with that requested information that has been provided to the commission. We are here tonight to request a certificate of appropriateness for the design as presented. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam Wagner, and he will be presenting to you the information that we have provided to you for tonight's meeting. And any of the development team is going to be happy to answer any questions that you may have following that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Adam Wagner, partner at Market Square Architects. Thanks again for having us this evening. I'm going to ask that my colleague, Christina O'Brien, be given the reins to present the PowerPoint, and then I will be presenting based on that. So if she can share her screen now, and you should all see that on your computers. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right. Well, as Sharon said, our presentation tonight, we want to focus on, it was the 8 items that that were highlighted in our last presentation to you as items that you wanted to see more detail on. So I will go through those point by point. And then certainly if there are any questions beyond that, we are here to answer them. So with that, Christina, can you go to slide 2? So the first slide here, there was a request of the board to provide the railing details that would be used at both the roof deck and at the balconies off the back side of the building. And what you see here are a couple of photos indicative of what we are proposing. It is a black metal fencing. The reason why we chose black in this case is we felt that that would be the most appropriate color to just kind of disappear into the skyline. These railings are designed to be fully code compliant in terms of the 4-inch sphere test and the railing height of 42 inches. Pretty straightforward in terms of a guardrail that we could be doing here. Simple details, nothing elaborate, just very straightforward. And with that, let's go to the next one. Whoops, I think we jumped over the pergola. Yep. All right, so the next item was the rooftop pergola, and you asked for further detail on that. So as you can see here, we've got a couple of drawings, basically showing what that will look like at the top of the roof. But then we've got a couple of idea images. This is a very traditional open air pergola. It's really a sunshade. It would be constructed out of either wood or a composite material. That has not been determined at this point. If it pleased the board that we moved in one direction or the other, I'm sure we would take that guidance and move forward with it if you do have a preference. And with that, let's go to number 3. Number 3, you had asked for additional information on the sliding glass doors. Now, as you all know, the current building does not have any sliding glass doors. So this was an area that, as opposed to trying to replicate something that wasn't original to the building, we're presenting something here that's a little bit more contemporary. It's a full glass sliding glass door. But what we would propose is that we match the color of the windows that are being proposed so that everything marries together and looks harmonious. We're also showing here a brick mold trim detail that would be used to make the transition between these masonry rough openings, the storefront window system that goes in, and the brick. So you see that detail there as well. With that, let's move to the 4th item. The 4th item pertains to the wooden bump out on the back of the fly loft that you can see at the rear of the building. If you'll recall, the rear of the building is a blank brick canvas with a wooden bump out that was built at some point. I don't know if it was original to the building or if it was constructed at a later date. What we're proposing at that bump out is to remove it from the building and install a storefront glass system. It would not be an operable window system. It's really a viewing picture frame, if you will. So anybody on the inside of the building would get to experience the river through this picture window. System is basically a center glazed aluminum frame window system. Can be steel. In all likelihood, this would be steel. Again, we would match the color of the windows we were proposing so that everything is harmonious. But knowing that a storefront system is not something that would be original to the building, much like the sliders, this is a mild departure from the original aesthetic of the building. With that, let's move to the next one. When we met with you last, we talked quite a bit about the entry canopy. And if you'll recall, we had a large canopy over the 3 central doors and then smaller canopies over the 2 outside flanking doors. And one of the items that seemed to be of interest to the board is in the photograph on the left, the original photograph of the Ioka Theater with the Ioka Blade sign, that canopy had some ornamental detail on it. They're actually bird spikes. because you don't want birds nesting up there on the canopy. But it does provide a very nice articulation to that. So it's not just a flat piece of bent metal. It's got a decorative element to it. And Christina, if you can slide to the right slightly where we have the detail. There you go. You can see how it takes that hard edge from the top edge of the canopy, softens it up a little bit, gives it a little articulation, but we would still be proposing to have the tiebacks to the building. The structure doesn't change. It's just really an elaboration, if you will. With that, let's go to the next one. All right. If you recall, where we left off was to take one set of the original Ioka letters off of the marquee and put them on the building as a signage. And one of the questions that this board asked to us is, what was our intent for lighting that signage? You will be able to see a little bit later on in the rendering. We have illustrated how that light up, how that sign would look when it was lit. But what we're proposing is a gooseneck light fixture that would be located over the letters on the wall and provide downlight to illuminate that sign without any light escaping into the air, dark skies, those types of concerns. So this is a pretty simple light fixture. But I think the illumination effect that it will provide to the Ioka sign will give it a lot of character. Anytime you light up brick, in my personal opinion, it looks pretty cool. And I think with letters on the brick wall, illuminated from above, a very pleasant aesthetic will be created. And with that, can we go to the next one? So this slide pertains to the board's comment about signage for this building. As we mentioned, we are looking to have both potentially commercial and or retail uses on the first floor of this building, as well as some sort of hospitality function on the lowest level. And those businesses will certainly want to be advertised. Now, once we get to that point of really understanding the signage, we will, of course, be going back for signage permits. But we wanted to give you an idea of what we had in mind. And let me start with the image on the upper left-hand corner. There are two areas that we have identified, and maybe Christina can use her cursor there, where it says proposed tenant signage, see historic photo below. These are two locations on the building facade that have historically been used for signage. And the photo, if we can just scroll down a little bit, you can see them outlined in red there. These are areas that going back 90 years have been used for signage. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to not only pay homage to the original signage of the building, but really it's a good opportunity for retail or commercial tenants that are in this building to make it known who they are and what they're doing there. The other four signs that you can see identified in this plan are hanging signs, and Christina is identifying where those four are. Four hanging signs that would come down from the canopy. And over on the, if we zoom out now, over on the right-hand side of this slide, we've given a couple of examples of similar conditions where you have a hanging sign advertising what the business would be hanging off a canopy above. So that is the approach we're taking there. Certainly, we don't know what those signs will say at this point. We don't know what color they'll be because we don't know who those tenants will be. Let's go ahead and move to the next one. All right. This slide pertains to a topic that we've spent a good amount of time on. which is the simulated divided light versus true divided light. And again, we have continued to do our homework on this and balance what we think is appropriate for the building with what is appropriate for energy efficiency, with what is of reasonable cost for us to do for this. And we kept coming back to the solution of the simulated divided light. But we did very much hear this board's interest in using the internal spacer bar, which you can see in the upper right-hand detail. So the spacer bar really makes the window appear as if it's individual divided lights, but you still get the performance of a simulated divided light window. Again, here we're showing the brick mold trim. We are showing the proposed choice of color for the windows. And we're hoping that the board finds this solution to be is agreeable to all, because it's a good compromise for the energy efficiency and the aesthetic that we're trying to achieve. Go ahead down to the next one. And I believe this is our last detail slide. The board had requested that we provide details regarding the windows and doors, how they would be set into the facade. You know, we talked at length about the windows being set in at a depth that really illustrated the thickness of the masonry at the exterior wall, gave the building a lot of character, the shadow lines, etc. And so we've detailed a few things here. On the left is a typical window section. On the right are the head and sill blow up details of what those are. So you can see where the glass, the pane of the glass is set in pretty significantly from the plane of the exterior brick, which is going to create that depth that you're looking to achieve to match what's there now. You can see the brick mold at the top of the window head, and that would be wrapping. And then we've gone into figuring out exactly how the windows would be flashed so that rainwater doesn't leak inside of our newly renovated building. If you can just scroll out there. Yeah, the bottom detail shows the flashing at the sill. And let's go to the next slide. There you go. So here again, for your reference, we've provided the before and after line drawings of the elevations. So on the right, you have the front elevation of the building, the lower one being the existing, the upper one being the proposed. On the left-hand side of the page, the existing rear elevation and the proposed. And let's go to the next slide. Again, the side elevation. This is the alley elevation, which currently doesn't have much going on. The windows that are there have been blocked up, and we discussed this. We're proposing a glass block on the lower level with some new punched windows above. And if you can slide down, the other elevation, this is the party wall to the left side if you're looking at the front of the building. Again, minimal changes here, some additional punched windows, the balconies, as you can see. And let's keep scrolling down. And lastly here, I believe this is the last slide. Oh, no, it's not. So here we've got that rendering of the exterior of the building. The thing I really want to point out here is that gooseneck light fixture that sits right over the top of the Ioka letters, really highlighting that component of the elevation. You can also see here the articulation in the canopies. Kind of looks just like it's got a jagged edge to it, but that's the bird protection we had shown before. And if you can scroll down to the next page. And here we again have the rear elevation of the building, really just showing you again some of those changes that we're proposing, the roof decks, now the pergola at the rooftop, the new stair overrun, the punched openings, etc. And with that, I will return it back to you, Mr. Chairman. And as I said when we started, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam and applicants for that. And I'm going to go ahead and allow the commission members by calling on you to go ahead and give your comments or ask your questions of the applicants. And Adam or Christina, you can choose who would like to answer those individually. First, I'd like to call on Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern really is what has been done to preserve the marquee. It just feels very weak to take the freestanding letters that are on the front of the marquee, replace the marquee with a square marquee, and to mount the letters on the side of the building. In that sense, it feels inappropriate in a preservation sense. If we have something that has a shape to it, a form, something that comes off at an angle, and now we've squared it off, I'm not paying respect to what was there. And I'm not promoting preserving the signboard, but I'm promoting preserving the freestanding letters. And I mentioned this at the last meeting, and I feel there's been no response to it. It just feels very, very weak to me. My other concern is just in contrast, and I know we don't have purview over color, but you're taking this high contrast black awning and then you're matching it up with a terratone window that, I don't know if you're trying to match the existing trim of the or brick details, but it just doesn't stand out at all. Those are my concerns with the project. Otherwise, I feel the windows are appropriate, railings are appropriate, and the terrace at the top is appropriate. I don't think they addressed what the mechanical equipment was going to be, whether or not there was going to be a large air handler, and whether or not that was going to be placed out of view. That's all I have. Thank you.
Adam or Christina, would you like to respond?
Sure. Let me start with the mechanical component. So we have not completed a full MEP engineering design for this building yet. We are still working through things like HDC approval, as you all know. At some point, we will have a better understanding of what that rooftop equipment is going to be. And it would be our anticipation that if we find it's going to be something that you will either see from a public way or see from the street, we would look to come back to this board to present that. Our desire would be to absolutely screen it in any way that we can, so you don't see it from a public way. Certainly you'll see it if you're up on the rooftop deck. But until we know exactly what our commercial uses are going to be and what those HVAC requirements are, we're not able to fully size that equipment. So I think that's where we are on that piece. But we will try to, again, keep it out of view as much as possible. As for the marquee, we anticipate there's going to be further discussion on this evening. We've come around on this one a couple of different directions. If you will recall, we started out with a proposal which was actually more historic to the original IOCA building than the current marquee is. And that was done at a time and built at a time that I think very few people who are on this phone call will have a recollection of because of the date that the marquee predates to. We've talked about it a little bit. The functional purpose of the marquee really obsolete at this point. This building is no longer going to be a theater building, and for many reasons, no longer warrants having a marquee sign. But we do want to be sensitive to, as we've talked about, the iconography of the letters, and really creating that presence of what this building is when people come to town. And so, yes, the current solution or the current proposed solution is not a direct replication of what is there. It is a little bit of a hybrid, and we hope that you'll find it's a hybrid that reintroduces the new life of what this building is going to be now that it's no longer going to be a theater.
Okay. And Adam, just as clarification or rebuttal to the original design, Curtis's original comments were, we're not looking to replicate a sign that already does not exist. That was the historical element that was there, but we weren't trying to recreate a old sign and return it to. It's more about the preservation of what is existing. So that was just a recap of his rebuttal to that original design. Curtis, is there anything you wanted to rebut or no?
No, I was just looking at form and shape of what he's proposing as an awning. If I wanted to pay respect to something that is existing as a recognizable historic form, which are freestanding letters, triangular, this design does not respond to those at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Curtis. I will move over to Pam Jedham, if you are ready to give some comments or questions.
Well, they answered all my questions. I was worried about the AC up on the top, and he just answered that right now. Would this be a good time to mention that the Historical Society would love to have one set of those letters? That they are not going to be thrown into the dump?
Certainly, if you'd like to.
All right. Speaking for the Historical Society, I have spoken to the curator. We did have a trustees meeting on Tuesday, and there are two sets of IOKA letters.
Correct.
Can't take both of them, but we'd love to have one of them. The Historical Society does have a fairly extensive collection of old Exeter signage, including Jaime's Food Store, if you remember that. So the IOCA letters would have a lot of friends, and we could use it for an IOCA display. So, There you are.
Well, thank you for that request. Anything additional for the applicants?
Oh, as I said, they answered the things I had down here, so that I'm happy.
Great. Adam, to speak to the mechanical question that has come up, I'm just asking in general, have you taken any care on the interior planning out of the floor spaces and the tenant spaces inside to create any chase for a mechanical air handling system? And would that penetrate more towards the center of the roof so that it would be screened as much as possible?
Yeah, that would be the desire. We're still working through some of that right now. What's unique about this building is, we're going to be creating some new floor levels on the interior. And once you get up to the roof level, there are 5-foot deep trusses that span the building. And so that's going to afford us some opportunities that we can bring vertical chases up the building just about anywhere and get into that interstitial space and then make transfers to wherever we need to on the roof level. So even if, we need a mechanical unit right in the front door, it doesn't mean that's where the exhaust will come out once you go vertical. And we're working through those things now.
Okay. Thank you for that response. I'm going to turn it over to Gwen. Are you available, Gwen?
Gwen?
You're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question. I was under the impression, and I need to have clarification on this. The proposed IOCA letters that you have on the building in this image, are those the original? Are those the IOCA letters that are on the sign right now? And if they are, I have a question about the composition of those letters, and I'm trying to, and looking at pictures that have been taken of them, it's not clear whether the bottom of the letters actually have a solid base. I don't know if the material that is around the edges of those letters continues to the bottom, and I'm just wondering if it doesn't, what that's going to involve in as far as bringing them up to a standard where you could actually put them on the side of the building. I share Curtis's concerns, and I won't repeat those. I agree with Curtis and the points that he made. And on the railing on the back of the building, I'm assuming that you're using the same treatment for the rooftop and also for the balcony. I'm sure you are, but I just want to make sure of that. And I think that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Adam or Christina or applicants and owners, if you could.
I'd be glad to respond. Let me start with the second point. Yes, the railing details that we use for the decks coming off the back of the building, we are proposing to do similar detailing for the roof deck. So all of that would be consistent. As for the letters, it was correctly pointed out that we have two sets of the letters, and when those are removed from the marquee, we're going to have to take a close look at which letters are in the best condition that can be reused, and they may require some minor repairs. And the idea is to have nice looking sign up there identifying this building. I can't speak to the earlier point as to whether or not the other set will be available to the Historic Society because they're not my letters. But I know that the project owner is on the call here tonight, and he might be able to speak to that. One of the two of them might be able to speak to that.
Okay.
So this is David speaking. Yes, we would definitely consider donating those letters to the Historic Society.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. I will open it up to Doug. Mr. McCallum.
Myself, unmute myself.
There you go.
Okay, not too much for me. I with the simulated divided light windows, I think you have me convinced that that's a good solution. So I won't bug you about that anymore. But I am a little disappointed. I started really liking the black sash, and looks like you've gone to a bronze anodized or a light bronze anodized storefront, and I was really liking the black look, but it's an aesthetic judgment. I don't think it's just my personal opinion at this point. So just thought I'd mention that you might give another thought what those colors are. I thought it looked pretty sophisticated. I know there's a lot of issues with the signage, and I just don't think there's any answer. I think there's a conflict between the use of the building and the design of that sign. I mean, I agree that it's an important landmark, has an important landmark function in the town now. And on the other hand, the use has changed to the point where when we walked through the building earlier in the week, it became clear to me that the back of those signs is pretty darn ugly, and it's not something I'd want to look out of my living room window at. And I think that it might have an effect on the value of the property. So it doesn't seem like a resolvable problem to me. And so I just don't know what to say about it, but I am happy to hear that there's interest in preserving at least the letters as a historic relic. I know it means a lot. I've talked to my neighbors, and it means a lot to people who've grown up with it. And it certainly, as it is now, it's a very strong landmark coming into the center. So just speaking as an architect, it'd be nice if somehow you could create a landmark element that was maybe not as strong as that one was, but had but was a little stronger. Something that really caught your eye, and that people could say, "Oh, walk over to that thing and take a turn to the left, and you'll be at your favorite restaurant or whatever." So that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Doug. All right. And Julie.
Okay, I agree with many of the things that have been stated. I agree with Curtis about the color of the awning as opposed to the color of the window. And I would rather see black too, because it fades into the building more. But if you're trying to match the color of the brick, I think that it kind of achieves the same object. And I think the depth of the windows, I really appreciate the figuring that out. I think the setback is good. The side elevations are fine. Everybody's covered my roof deck concerns. But we're going to have a talk about the marquee, because I've gotten testimony and input that may be more important to me than it had been before. So I guess I'm leaning towards, can we figure out a way to keep it? And I really do appreciate your thoughts towards keeping some aspect of that marquee as a, what's the word? To memorialize or mediate the loss of the marquee. But I kind of agree with Curtis and Doug that it's lacking something kind of not monumental, but in reference to the size and shape and use of the marquee. I don't find the keeping the marquee as a difficulty for what somebody sees looking out their window. Is that appropriate or not? Is the question of whether the marquee stays. It's part of the question. I don't know what else is on my list. A different question is the signage on the front that you're showing it on either side of the main doors. Is that where the current sign frames are, or has it moved? So that's one question.
Christina, would you mind answering that?
Christina, you might be on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, I was trying to figure that out. Yes, Julie, those are in the same locations. When we were out at the site the other day, there are still fasteners in the brick of where the original signs were. So we're not sure of the size, exactly what the size would be, but they would be in the same location of where they were originally.
Okay, great. Okay, I think that's it for right now until we get into, I think, public comment.
Okay. So I'll give my comments as it pertains to the 9 items or the 9 items that we had asked to return with. For the roof railings, I don't see any issues for the roof railings or balconies. The pergola details that were shown, you talked about not deciding yet on a material, whether it would either be wood or it would be a composite. I think that we would love to see a natural wood up there as preferred, but we'd like to get more clarity on what that material would be to make a decision on it. The material provided for the sliding doors, did you have a material in mind for those sliding doors on the back? And did you have a manufacturer that you were proposing for that? That would be a question on the sliding doors. The fly loft, I guess it would be a similar question, the steel or aluminum. You had mentioned it would probably need to be steel, or I guess it goes kind of hand in hand with the sliding doors. If the sliding doors are going to be aluminum material, then I would assume the aluminum storefront would be okay for the fly loft area as well. Around the sliding doors, you mentioned having a trim of a brick mold casing. I think that's fine because there is no existing trim on that elevation right now around that. But the brick mold casing that you have proposed for the front of the building is not what is there now. The casing that is around in the jambs and the head around those windows is more of a very heavy brick bullnose. If you look at it, it's not a standard bullnose of maybe like an inch or an inch and a half. It's actually a larger one. It's about a 2-inch or a 2.5 inch. I did take a look at that on the site walk specifically. So if you could revisit that, that would be great. Also, the sill detail of the windows, you're not showing a historically thick sill, which would catch that type of brick mold or would catch that type of jam trim coming down. So if you could take a look at that as well. It's not difficult to shorten the height of the window to provide that thick historic sill that's there now. You had mentioned coming back for a separate signage application for the tenants, so I do appreciate you saying that. Simulated divided lights with the spacer bar, that is great. Thank you for that. And that's the comments that I had on that. So with that, I think the questions that I did post, Adam or Christina, if you wanted to answer those, was materials of the sliding doors and the fly loft, as you call it, in the back. Did you have a proposed material for those or manufacturer?
So we have not identified a manufacturer yet. We're certainly looking at options and talking to folks, but you don't want to tell somebody they have the project because the price seems to go up when you do. So we're keeping that a little open right now. We'll certainly be finalizing that very soon. Let me jump to the pergola first. If it pleases the board to have a wood structure for the pergola, I think we'd be very receptive to just being pointed in that direction. If that's the pleasure of the board, we will do a wood pergola. The windows and sliders right now, we are looking at a fiberglass option. So I think that is potential. I'm not sure we can do the picture window at the back of the fly loft in that sort of material. It might need to be more of a commercial storefront.
Okay.
Again, we would match the color, but the material might be different. Here again, you'll see that material from the inside when you're up close, but anybody looking at it from the outside is going to be on the other side of the river, and it would be very difficult to identify what that material was.
Yeah, it's more so about just consistency of the material and the color as it applies to both. You know, you're going to have a different finish that's going to go on extruded aluminum as you are going on, say, a fiberglass or something like that. So sure. It's just consistency as much as possible so that the color stays true and the age is the same.
Yep, and that would be our intent as much as we can. I think we need to verify structurally what our options are for that storefront window, the picture window in the back.
Mm-hmm. And as talking about specifically about material of those windows or doors or a manufacturer is specific to accepting the application, knowing that what we're approving is what is going to be built. So, you know, if you say that it's going to be a fiberglass window, there's multiple manufacturers that can do that, multiple manufacturers that can do aluminum, multiple that can do wood. So that leaves it a little open-ended. If it is a manufacturer with the model, then even better, because then we know exactly what we're getting. So I'd leave you with that.
Yeah, if there's a preference of the board, what you would prefer to see us use, we would certainly love to hear that. To know if it is composite or aluminum clad or whatever. You know, if the board is leaning in a certain direction, we would like to know what that direction is.
I would say there isn't any particular direction we'd lean. I would reference our guidelines to say what we've provided in there as options for those materials, and then we would not necessarily. We would allow the guidelines to guide that decision for you, and we would approve.
Well, then I think as we stand here today, we are proposing a composite fiberglass window and sliding door system.
Okay. All right.
Adam, this is David. We're proposing aluminum storefronts for the rear of the building. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
For the picture window, yes.
Yes.
So two different materials. Storefront aluminum for fly loft area and the doors that would be associated with that, and then fiberglass for the sliders. Okay. All right. So at this time during the public hearing, we're going to open it up to the public for public comment. A couple of questions that I'm going to ask for is, a couple of notes. First of all, we have attendees that are part of this call right now, and to ask for the ability to speak in front of the board in favor or against the application, I'd ask you to click the raise hand button. I see one raised hand right now, and we will go down and through those. When we do call on you, I would ask that you state your name and your location. If you are a Exeter resident, then we would have no issue hearing you speak. If you are not an Exeter resident, we as the board will have to decide and accept with a motion to allow you to speak to be heard. This is just protection in terms of hearing everyone's views, and ultimately it's not that you can't speak if you don't live in Exeter, but we just need to follow the proper protocol. So
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question too before we begin with the public hearing? This is of a housekeeping procedural matter.
Sure.
Thank you. As you know, I submitted a letter today concerning the petition that has been submitted This contains a number of signatures, as you know from the letter, many of which are not from Exeter residents. And I had asked specifically that the board issue some sort of a ruling as to how they were going to address that petition, and also the materials that were attached to that petition, some of which were social media printouts. I understand from the comments that you have just made now that you are going to ask, in terms of the public hearing, that people identify themselves as being Exeter residents or not. And if they are Exeter residents, they're going to be allowed to speak. If they aren't, then you will make a person-by-person determination, apparently.
That's correct.
As to whether or not that they will be speaking. So yes. Am I to assume as well that same treatment for purposes of the record will take place with the written materials for the petition?
To over 2,000 people on a petition? No, we as a commission do not necessarily respond to a petition per se. If something like that is offered as evidence as a for or against an application, we take it in as evidence, but it's not something that we have to respond to in any manner.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman, but what I'm asking is for a ruling that you will not consider the signatures from people who are not from Exeter.
I don't believe we can do that. I understand that there are people that have signed that petition that definitely are probably not in the interests, as you've stated, people that are from Bosnia or from Alaska. But I do believe that people that are in and around the state of New Hampshire, and certainly the most immediate towns and cities that are in Massachusetts and Maine, do have influence in terms of the preservation of a historic item in New England. So I cannot say that we cannot hear from people that are not specifically in Exeter.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to have my objection noted for the record to that position.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, might I add to that? While I agree, if you read the letter from the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, they make a statement of the importance of this building and its features that are regional, because it wasn't built just for Exeter. It's not hasn't been used by just Exeter residents. Some of the people that may be from other states were Exeter residents. Some have been indicated on part of that petition. I do have a question, though, about using the social media copies that were attached. That is a whole different bailiwick as far as I'm concerned, because we don't know who really wrote those. So I would consider accepting the petition as they were signed and recorded with the addresses, but the add-on copies of the statements not be regarded.
I think that's fair. If someone is putting their name and address to a petition, then they have a strong belief one way or the other about it. The additional comments on social media, I agree, we cannot have any confidence that those have not been vetted properly. So I agree with that assessment, Julie. And also, I would say, as a regional asset of the IOCA did serve a larger community than just Exeter, this building was also on the National Registry of Historic Places. So this is recognized nationally as a building, not just Exeter or the region. It's also been placed on one of 7 to save as a historic property. So there is a lot more influence, and there's a lot more, someone's got it. Can you mute, please? I got a lot of feedback. there is a lot more interest and influence and educated minds about historic preservation that I think we cannot limit it to just specifically the Exeter residents.
Mr. Chairman, can I also ask, while we're on that topic, the letter from the Preservation Alliance does not say how it came to the conservation, or to the Historic District Commission. Was that requested by the Historic District Commission?
No, it was not.
Do we know how it came to come? I mean, the other letter, from the Division of Historical Resources, indicates that it's at the request of local constituents, although we have no idea who those are. So I'm just curious as to how either of these letters came to be before the commission.
I can tell you personally, I did not request any letter from anyone pertaining to the Preservation Alliance or the Department of Historic Resources. I don't know who the constituents are that they are referencing. They did not speak to me.
All right. Well, again, I just want to reiterate for the record my objection to this. I find that, as analogous, and this goes back to the discussion that we had back in June, too, in which other land use boards use a standard of what is direct impact to people in terms of being the standard by which people are allowed to speak or not speak. And I just find it very perplexing, to say the least, that documents which include signatures from another country, for example, are going to be submitted to this board for part of the decision. So I'll just state my objection for the record, and then we'll leave it at that for the time being.
Okay. All right. And with that, I'm going to call on a member of the public, Ms. Lori Couture. You can go ahead, and Exeter TV, can you please help us allow Lori to talk to us? Please state your name and your location.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Laurie A. Couture, and I'm from Newmarket, and I'm requesting the right to speak because I have submitted the petition and the intervention, as well as some of the documents you mentioned had something to do with.
Okay, so commission members, I'd like to call for a motion to either allow or deny Lori to speak in front of this board.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second? I think.
Second. That's Gwen.
Okay. Thank you, Gwen. All in favor?
You have to do that by roll call.
Roll call. Julie?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Doug?
No.
Curtis? You're on mute, Curtis.
Yes.
Okay. So moved. Lori, go ahead.
Hi, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I am a former Exeter resident. I lived in Exeter for 20 years, and my family has lived in Exeter since 1938 and still does. My grandfather still lives here. My mother's sister and I are alumni of Exeter High School, and my grandmother, Wanda Sanborn, was a town employee for 20 years at the Exeter Highway Department, Police Department, and school lunch program. She also worked at Kurtz's. I worked at the Ioka Theater at age 15 in 1990, so I just wanted to establish my standing for asking to speak. I am requesting that the board consider keeping, restoring, and saving the current marquee for 10 reasons that I submitted in my letter. I'm not going to go into them lengthy. I'm just going to list them because I did provide the letters, and if for some reason you haven't received them, you could always let me know and I could provide another copy. But just to briefly state them, The reasons are: one, you are required to follow the ordinance of the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, which would cover the marquee. Number two, the Ioka marquee is specifically listed on the National Register of Historic Places, not just the Mayor building, but the actual Art Deco marquee is specifically mentioned. We have dated the marquee to somewhere between 1939 and 1941 at the latest that it was put up. Another question is, what is behind the marquee? What will happen to the facade of the building and the marquee if it is removed? I have it on good faith from a man who had strong historical ties to the building, but wished to remain anonymous, that there were masonry issues when the marquee was installed. So I'm not going to go into that any further because you have my letter. Number four, I believe the marquee is repairable, and we have many examples in the state of signs and marquees that were repaired, like the Yokin sign as our neighbor in Portsmouth. That is not contextual to the businesses, the bank, and the Rite Aid there. However, the developers saw tremendous value in saving the Yokin sign, and it has been restored beautifully, despite its intricacy and its timing of the neon, which the Ioka marquee doesn't even have that intricacy, so it wouldn't even. We also have the Palace Theater, the two colonials in the state, the Weir's Beach sign. Number five, this is really important, and I ask that you really understand this one. There's only one Ioka. There are many Strands and Colonials and other similar repeat theaters around the country, but there is only one Ioka, and that means we only have one Ioka marquee, and we have it right here in Exeter, New Hampshire, all to ourselves. Number six is the marquee is iconic, and it's a trademark of Exeter. And in fact, there's an article on the National Park Service that talks about the importance of preserving historic signs that do not have context to the current business. And one of the things they say is you should restore a sign or a marquee when it's not just a landmark, but it's become an icon of the community. And boy, our marquee, it is so iconic that you just have to mention Exeter and people picture the marquee. Number seven, a marquee apartment view would be a perk, not a deterrent. Many community members, including myself, have expressed enthusiasm at the idea of renting or buying an apartment or condo that would have this marquee view. One man actually stated to us, I think it was on the petition, it might have been in that social media piece, but one of the things that was kind of silly is he said he would kill for a marquee view. I've had many people say that to me personally as well. The new owners of the Ioka could actually market the marquee view as an amenity and charge more for the marquee apartment. Number eight, a marquee would be a huge compliment to a speakeasy and a business. You'd be able to put up whatever messages you want. And interestingly, one of the things one of the former owners told me is that even when the Ioka was empty and not generating any income, what was interesting is the marquee was still communicating to the community. And at one point, the marquee was still a revenue stream, even when movies weren't being shown. So you could continue to generate revenue by putting up those personal messages that people liked when you don't have anything going on in the speakeasy. Also, 9, removing the marquee. This is an important one. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm also the mother who lost my son. Removing the marquee is guaranteed to cause a grief reaction to the town. And this should not be minimized because this could harm the new Ioka owner's business. Nobody understands the science of grief better than somebody who's gone through it. But grief causes a numbness, it causes a shock and a denial. And then people tend to go into a sort of, if only I had done this or done that bargaining stage. And then numbness, anger, depression, and sadness follow. And when all this happens, people withdraw. So whether it's a person, a pet, or a beloved town icon, people will grieve that. And it could affect the downtown businesses, including these new owners' businesses. Now, I'm all in favor of supporting the new IOCA venture, and so I don't want to see that happen. Number 10, and this is probably the most important point, Exeterites, Seacoast community members, New Hampshire residents and beyond, both young and old, love the IOCA marquee. Kids who are too young to have seen a movie, to the eldest citizens who remembered seeing movies there back in the 30s, we all want the marquee. There's been, as of the last time I checked, there were 2,363 people who signed that petition. 165 of those were in paper. And while I don't understand who signed from Bosnia, the majority of the people who signed were from Exeter or New Hampshire or were previous residents of Exeter. So I'm asking that for these reasons and many more that we might only discover in the regret of hindsight, I implore you to please vote in favor of the restoration, rehabilitation, and preservation of our IOCA's historic marquee, and that you respect, that the applicants respect this, and that their creative architectural team come up with a redesign plan that includes the marquee. Now, we do have a legal counsel, Scott Hogan, who has stepped in. He is sort of the marquee's personal attorney, I call it, and he was not able to be here tonight, but he has been helping out, and together he and I have been able to talk to the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance and the New Hampshire Division of Historic Resources, and both of them wrote a letter on behalf of saving the marquee. So I have so much information, and I did present a binder of information. If any of that, like the social media pieces, are not acceptable to you, well, perhaps many of the other pieces of evidence I included, such as the IOCA marquee on the National Registry, or Joshua Locke's marriage proposal that was done on the marquee, or the many other pieces of evidence that we submitted, including the petition and the article, The Preservation of Historic Signs. I'm not sure if you got that one because that came later. But thank you so much for letting me speak. I appreciate it greatly. And I'm hoping that we will not make a mistake that is not repairable for our community, because we love the marquee and we want to see it. And we also want to support David and Jay in their new venture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori, for speaking. The next hand raised by the public is Miss Carr. I'm not sure how to pronounce your first name.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you please state your name, your location, and your reason for wanting to speak today, so we may decide if you're not an Exeter resident?
Yeah, so my name is Mairead Carr, and I am an Exeter resident. I live on Four Cross Road in Exeter.
Okay, great. Thank you. Please go ahead.
All right. So I've been an Exeter resident my whole life. So I have lived here for 31 years. And as a native-born member of the Exeter community, words cannot describe how much the IOCA has meant to me and how much that marquee means to me. And I find it an iconic part of downtown Exeter, and just as much, I would say, as the bandstand in downtown. And I would urge the commission to please preserve the marquee in its entirety and have it remain on the building. I know of many other businesses that have used marquees, like ones as much as Trader Joe's or Urban Outfitters have just used existing marquees for their businesses. And I see no reason. I think the marquee could be an asset to any business that decides to start in that building. And I also, I know that I would love, again, if I had an apartment there with the marquee view, I would also consider, I would love to have that view. And I would consider that to be an asset. And the entire Ioka building means so much to me, and I can't describe the emotional impact it would have if the marquee was to go. And I hope you consider that when you're making your decision tonight. I also, listening to this meeting tonight, I did not know that there was a plan to put sliding doors in for the entrances. And I think that would be an aesthetic misstep for downtown Exeter, because there's no other businesses in Exeter that have sliding doors downtown. And I think that would be a mismatch. So thank you. And I urge you to please consider keeping the marquee.
Thank you, Ms. Card. Just as a point of clarification, the proposal does not show sliding doors on the front of the building. Those are for proposed balconies that are off the back of the building on the riverside. Okay. The doors on the front would remain as swinging doors for the center entrance, and then the two flanking side doors would be fixed, but would mimic swinging doors, traditional swinging, double swinging doors.
All right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. All right, moving on to the next attendee, I have Linda F. Wade. Linda, could you please speak? Exeter TV, could you allow her to speak and go ahead, state your name, location, and reason for speaking tonight?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Linda F. Wade. I was born in Exeter, New Hampshire in 1950. I went to school in Exeter, and I graduated from Exeter High School. I lived in Exeter the majority of my life, with the exception mostly for the last few years, and I live in Northampton.
Okay.
I don't remember a time when
one second, please. If not as a current Exeter resident, we just need to vote as roll call for the commission members to allow you to speak.
Okay.
Julie?
Yes.
Yes. Curtis?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. Go ahead, Linda.
Daddy Skills, order out of chaos, April 2nd.
Okay, thank you. I don't remember a time, let me see, I don't remember a time when the Ioka marquee was not there. I'm not sure if it was the architect for the owners who said the blade sign is not remembered by anyone in this meeting tonight, if somebody had said that. And I would add that anyone living in Exeter today probably doesn't remember the blade sign. Seeing the Ioka marquee when I drive into the downtown area makes the town of Exeter feel so welcoming to me. I can't imagine having the marquee missing, and I can't fathom how shocking that would feel. I think many of us, when we enter the downtown area of the Ioka, our natural impulse is to look and see what is being displayed on the marquee. It brings a smile to one's face. And I can't imagine the downtown area without this historic landmark. It would be as painful to me to lose the marquee as it would be to have someone tear down the Exeter Bandstand or the Lady of Justice on the cupola of the Exeter Town Hall. Cupola.
Yes.
I'm not sure if the people of Exeter can comprehend what losing the marquee would do to the character of our lovely New England town, as the marquee sets the nostalgic and historic tone of Exeter's downtown area. Losing the marquee will cause a great void in not only the downtown area of Exeter, but in the hearts and minds of Exeter residents, as well as anyone in New England who loves the marquee. Presently, people in our country are trying to hold on to something tangible that brings them comfort and security. With so much insecurity in our lives now, to lose something else of historic value will be painful and traumatic. The downtown business owners may be negatively impacted by such unhappiness from residents and visitors to Exeter alike. This is why it was so important for people who saw the value of restoring the Yoken sign, the Weirs Beach sign, the Strand, and other historic signs in New England to restore and save something which has value in more ways than monetary to New England residents and residents of other states who have historic values. I do believe that the marquee can be restored to be aesthetically pleasing on both sides of the sign. Although I agree that preserving historic elements of the facade of the Ioka building should be adhered to as strictly as possible for the sake of aesthetics of the architecture of the building, I'm here foremost to speak for the preservation of the marquee. I do hope that members of the Exeter Historic District Commission will consider this when they uphold the obligation of their position to preserve historic architecture of the downtown historic area by protecting our historic Ioka marquee. It was quite shocking for me to hear someone asking for the letters of the marquee even before a vote on the marquee's fate. And even before this meeting was half over. And it is so painful to me to hear that someone wanting to take the letters of the marquee for historic remembrance, but not think the marquee itself was worth saving. This feels to me like someone lying in wait for the clothing on the body of a person after they die. I actually believe that the Ioka marquee would be a huge selling perk for the owners, advertising the rental space as the Ioka Apartments, Ioka Condos, or Ioka Complex, or whatever the building will be used for, could very well bring a higher price for the nostalgic element of the marquee on the building. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Next, as an attendee, I have just Michael. Exeter TV, would you allow Michael to speak? Please state your name, your location, and your reason for speaking tonight.
My name is Michael J. Meslowski. Excuse me, I'm old. I am the current how the hell do I say it? I run the Facebook website, Exeter, New Hampshire, historical, wonderful, and all that other stuff. I have over 500 people that love Exeter. I was born in 1955 in Exeter and lived in the area till 1990.
Okay, and your current residence, Michael?
Oh, I'm sorry, Land O'Lakes, Florida.
Okay. So commission members, I'll do another roll call. This is for approval of allowing Michael to speak tonight. Julie?
Well, I will move that question first.
Excuse me?
I said I will move the question first.
Oh, okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Curtis. All in favor of the motion to allow Michael to speak tonight? Go ahead, Julie.
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. I was born in 1955 at the Exeter Hospital. Before me, my mother lived on High Street and Franklin Street. She lived in Exeter as a little girl. Her father and mother are both buried in the Exeter Cemetery. My dad is buried there, and my mom is. So I'd say those are pretty strong ties.
Mm-hmm.
I look back during my history, and I'd like to bring up a few locations that are no longer with us. Number one is the courthouse, county courthouse in downtown Exeter. Does anybody remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we do.
I'd also like to bring up the Pleasant Street buildings where I lived first, that were all raised. Now, they were raised to put in the library, which I strongly approve of. But do you remember those?
Yes.
Do you think anybody after you will remember any of those memories? The Historical Society does a great job for trying to keep memories with them. I think that the marquee is just as important a memory of Exeter to reinforce all the people that have come and gone, that went off to war, fought in World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and some of them never came home. But when they did come home, the Ioka sign welcomed them. I think it's important to keep the character of the town together. And if that can't be done, I beg to have that sign removed carefully and placed in a prominent place downtown where everybody can still see it. But my number one concern is to keep it right where it is and don't lose this history. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Last hand raised right now in terms of attendees is John Scolamanero. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. Exeter TV, please allow John to speak. State your name, your location, current residence, and your reason for speaking tonight.
Yes, hi, my name is John Scolamanero. I am a resident of Exeter, New Hampshire. I live on Dow Street. I grew up in Exeter, went to Exeter High School, graduated from Exeter High School, lived away for several years, and then recently returned to the town the past couple of years. Okay. The reason I'd like to speak today is I'd like to discuss keeping the marquee.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think a lot of the legal implications and ramifications of removing an iconic part of our town have been discussed already. So I'd like to instead talk a little bit about a different story, about a different marquee. So after graduating from high school and going to college and graduating from college, I found myself working in the state of Oklahoma. And in 2012, a giant tornado destroyed a large swath of a town called Moore, Oklahoma. Now, I was living in a part of the Oklahoma City area at that time. And during the tornado went right through an area of Moore that had become fairly famous for the Warren Theater. Now, the Warren Theater was a venture of a Kansas resident who had decided that he wanted to bring back the sort of the golden age of cinema and show people what it was like back then today. And it became literally the most popular theater in town. And it's almost one of the reasons I loved to go to the Warren Theater was it was like growing up in Exeter and going to the Ioka. You know, if you were an adult in the Warren, you could go to the balcony. The balcony had full dinner service during your movie. It was specially constructed. And it was just in this perfect, wonderful Art Deco style. But during the tornado in 2012, the entire area around the Warren Theater was destroyed, and the Warren Theater itself was directly hit by the tornado. The tornado came on so fast that people had to rush out of the movie theaters they were in, and they took shelter in what one article recalled the Warren Theater as a bunker or capable of sustaining a bomb blast. But what the articles don't talk about is one of my friends was visiting an Indian restaurant in the area. And during the tornado, during the storm, he and his family fled the restaurant, which was destroyed, and they couldn't see. And the only way they knew where to go was by the marquee that was glowing in the distance of the Warren Theater. So they ran to the Warren Theater and took shelter. After the tornado, the theater and the marquee was used as a way to communicate to the town and was also used as a place for people who had lost their homes and in many cases lost their loved ones to take shelter, to see movies, to receive aid. And it was just a wonderful part of that community. In a similar way, I see the marquee of the IOCA as a wonderful part of our community, as almost a beacon within the community. And whether it should be preserved for legal reasons or if it should be preserved for financial reasons, it should also be preserved for historical and emotional reasons as a part of the character of what makes Exeter, but also a way that Exeter can communicate to itself. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and I hope this story has been of value.
Okay, thank you, John. Next hand raised, I have Karen Weeks, Exeter TV. Would you please allow Karen to speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Karen Weeks, and I live in Exeter, New Hampshire, on Penn Lane. And my reason for speaking today is to speak up for keeping the IOCA marquee.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, I can't. These people have gone before me, are very eloquent and well-spoken. The stories were amazing, and I think they've said it all. I just wanted to go on record that I think, for all the reasons that they've already given, that the IOCA marquee should stay on the building. And I think that it's the HDC's job to make sure that happens. And I think I had sent you guys a letter saying pretty much just that. But I do also want to say that I think the developers have overall doing a fantastic job and so grateful they're saving that building. I have only lived in Exeter for 3 years, but I was born and raised in New Hampshire. I've been in Londonderry, Milford, Peterborough. But my father actually lived here during the 40s and 50s, and he remembers the marquee and the stories of just what they were saying, how the marquee wasn't just a place where the movies were advertised, but that a community was, in love with. It's just what makes downtown special. And everybody that I know, I grew up in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and if someone said to me Exeter and I closed my eyes and envisioned Exeter, it was the marquee I saw, not Phillips Academy, but the marquee. So I guess just to reiterate, I really think it's important that we do just what we need to do here and save that marquee on that building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Next with a hand raised, I have just the initials MSI. So Exeter, would you allow them to speak? Please state your name, your current residence, and your reason for wanting to speak tonight.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know why I said MSI. It must have been weird with the programming. But my name is Elizabeth Rollins. I was born in Exeter. I grew up in Brentwood, spent most of my life in Brentwood. But I did go to, obviously I went to Exeter Junior High, Exeter High School. I graduated from Exeter. And I've been part of the community for a long time now. Right now I live in Farmington. And I've been very much involved in the Save the Marquee petition.
Okay, so Exeter Commission, Historic Commission members, may I have a motion for or against allowing Elizabeth to speak?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to permit Elizabeth to speak. Thank you.
I'll second that. It's Gwen.
Gwen, second. Okay, thank you. All in favor, roll call. Julie?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Many of the people who spoke before me have made some beautiful remarks. I just would like to add, the marquee is symbolic of the mayor building itself. I mean, people don't look at it without seeing the marquee. To remove this would be an injustice to the history and the heritage of Exeter. To touch upon the statement that they might have difficulty renting it, Exeter is steeped with the arts. It is a musical, it is theatrical, there are performing arts, there are just artists in general in Exeter, and to have a place where you look out and you see a marquee, it just epitomizes what people stand for in that respect of being an artist. In regards to the objection in which the attorney spoke of that, somebody from Bosnia signed the petition. Well, I personally know people who grew up in Exeter. Heather Ramsey, I'm just going to use her name for an example, is a huge supporter of this. She grew up in Exeter. Her father, Robert Graves, taught at the junior high, and she is no longer even in Exeter. She's traveling. She's out of the country. There's multiple other people that I know who grew up in the area and are out of the country supporting this. So this is just an example of how far the reach goes for those who support this icon and love the marquee and feel that Exeter, it just wouldn't be Exeter without it. So to discredit that is also doing an injustice to the marquee, because this spans throughout the whole country. I mean, people that I know personally that went to Exeter, they're in California, they're in Florida, they're all over the place. So the marquee isn't just for the immediate community. Those memories and that history stays with them no matter where they go. And when they come home and that wouldn't be there, it would be like losing part of yourself. Basically, the IOCA is synonymous with Exeter. You don't go to Exeter without hearing about the bandstand, the IOCA, the town hall. I just am really wanting you to realize that this would not just be an impact for the immediate building. It would be a huge impact all around the country and even outside of the country. So that's basically, I just wanted to throw that in there and speak on the behalf of people who aren't really right there in Exeter anymore. And that's it.
Very much, Elizabeth. Next with a hand raised, I have Karen Dicey. Exeter TV, can you let Karen speak, please? Please state your name, your current residence, and your reason for speaking tonight.
Hi, my name is Karen Dicey, and I am a former Exeter resident. I currently live in Kensington, and I would like to speak on the preservation of the IOCA marquee, please.
Okay. Commission members, do you need any other information from Karen before making a motion to allow her to speak or denying her to speak?
No, Mr. Chair, I move to allow Karen Dicey to speak to this project.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second again.
Thank you, Gwen. Roll call for approval. Julie?
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
And Pam?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
I was not born in Exeter, but I moved there when I was 2. I lived there. I went to Exeter schools, Exeter Country Day School for kindergarten, the elementary school, all the way through Exeter High School. I lived there for at least 25 years. I moved away. I came back to Exeter. My parents lived there for the longest time. My dad, Doug Dicey, was the Parks and Recreation Director for many, many years, and my stepmom was the Assistant Director. And I know that they love Exeter, and they would definitely, having a little adrenaline rush. They would also approve of preserving the IOCA marquee. I remember going there as a child to see Charlotte's Web. I saw Xanadu there with my late mom. We went to see movies there all the time. And it's such an iconic part of downtown that if I were to drive down through town and not see it, it would be like something of my childhood was missing. It's such an iconic part of downtown, like the bandstand, like the town hall. You know, there's so much history in Exeter, and the people who went before me in this meeting were much more eloquent than I am right now, but they said so much, and I back them entirely. The IOCA marquee, it would not take a lot to preserve it, but if we get rid of it, if it gets pieced into like, oh, I got the I, oh, I got the K, if it goes away, in hindsight, we're going to regret it. So I would urge you to preserve the Ioka marquee and to restore it and to leave it where it belongs, right on the front of the mayor building downtown. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Another hand raised is Dawn Jelly. Dawn, go ahead and state your name, your residence, and your reason for speaking tonight.
Hello, my name is in Exeter, so I am an Exeter resident, and I would like to speak to preserving the Ioka marquee. Am I okay to go ahead?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I stood with Laurie one Saturday downtown talking about passers-by to see if they were aware of what was going to happen to the marquee. And people were very excited that somebody had bought the building, that they were renovating it. They were shocked to hear that the marquee might be leaving us. And it was very heartwarming to hear stories. Exeter residents, a lot of surrounding people that came from maybe Stratham, Brentwood, surrounding people. And then I talked to people from Florida who were snowbirds that would, live part of the time. So, and I heard many stories from a lot of people about. So it definitely was very moving. And I come from England, and obviously history is so important. My thoughts are the letters in front of an apartment would be funky. And I absolutely agree with the comment about Exeter being art, a place for artists. And if you don't want to look out at the letters, don't buy that or rent that apartment. And on the other side, you have a lovely water view. So would be a beautiful place to live. The signage would be fabulous for advertising, both for the Ioka building and for the town too. I think that's very important. I worked as a hospice nurse for about 15 years, and I know loss, and so I know that this loss of this marquee would be felt very deeply to Exeter residents and those concerned, and it would be significant. So, and I think it's compounded right now with the world that we live in. There is so much loss. There are so many places that aren't safe, and to have something that is so close to our hearts in Exeter that might not be there, I think is also significant right now in this world that we live in. So thank you. My vote is to preserve and not to look back and wish we had.
Okay, thank you very much. I do not have any other hands raised at the moment, so I am going to give it back to the applicants for rebuttal. For any of the questions, comments, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be making some comments initially just about the methodology for analysis that the board is, or that the commission is going to have to make. And then also, I suspect that the owners, David and Jay, will want to jump in and talk about some of the materials that they have direct knowledge about that I wouldn't necessarily have, but I'll certainly touch upon that as well. So first of all, I just want to say that I neglected to mention this at the beginning of the presentation, but and it was touched upon in one of the public comments. But we will be once the marquee is removed, we will be storing that off-site for 6 months safely, so that anyone who is interested in taking the marquee can, and then doing with it what they wish to, whether it's putting it into a museum or preserving it for some other sort of historical purpose. So I wanted to get that out there. I think in terms of the context of this discussion, I think it's important to remember that we as applicants have worked in very good faith with this commission. We have been before the commission since May. And as a matter of fact, we've been through 2 work sessions, both of which were very productive. During the second work session, I would note that not a single member from the public spoke, not one. And while there was some public comment in May, there was not anything at that time. We left at the end of the June meeting with the express understanding that the commission thought on a conceptual level that the design that we were proposing was appropriate and that there was no need, and I referred to my minutes, to go back to the drawing board and do a design again. So I'm somewhat perplexed, frankly, at the comments that have been made tonight because they seem to be quite different than what we were led to believe was in existence the last time we were here and that we relied on. So with that, by way of context, I want to turn now to what, from a legal perspective, how your analysis needs to play out in terms of making a decision. As you know, you're governed by Article 8, Section 8.9 of the zoning ordinance, which deals with the Historic District Commission. And that, in turn, that references that your guiding points are going to be the Exeter Downtown Master Plan, as well as the Secretary of Interior guidelines for the rehabilitation of historic structures. And I would also add that, although it's not specifically mentioned in the ordinance, that you also have design guidelines as well. So I'd like to walk through very briefly each of these and indicate to you the elements of these things that I think you need to bear in mind as you're going through your analysis. So first of all, with regard to the downtown master plan, I reviewed this, and there's a couple of points in here that I think are very important for the commission to note, and I'd like to just to read those. The master plan notes that, and this is on page 23 of the master plan, that Exeter's historic setting is fundamental to the identity of the community. And importantly, the town also needs to understand the role of Exeter's historic resources in the long-term viability of the local economy. Further, in the master plan, it goes on to state, and this is on page 31, I believe, that with regard to the downtown, it states, from an economic perspective, the town needs to continually examine ways to remove barriers to the occupation of empty spaces and any other conditions that would make the area somehow less attractive for investment. One notable example discussed at length in the master plan process is the Ioka Theater building, which closed in 2008 and has been unable to reopen since then. I think that's an important point for the commission to remember during its discussion because this has been closed since 2008. These are the first people, my clients are the first people to step forward since 2008 and be willing to invest in this property. It is questionable whether, if this deal doesn't work out for them, whether there's going to be anyone else stepping up to the plate to do this. And I think that part of your job as the commission is to, in addition to taking into account all of the various elements that you've heard about tonight, also take into account the need to adhere to the master plan and to honor the economic vitality of the downtown. Turning to the Secretary of Interior guidelines, this is an interesting document, and this is it references the preservation historic signs. There was some discussion about this before. I spent some time looking at this, and it's really broken down into several pieces, and I just want to walk through how that document goes through the analysis. It first of all indicates that signs may be icons because they are valued in and of themselves. And if there is an iconic value to the sign, then what do you do? So I think that before you can get into, well, what do you do is that you preserve the sign. That's the objective of this. However, before you can get to that point, once you get to that point, then you need to examine how the preservation can go forward. I think that one of the things that the brief notes is that, well, let me back up here. I think that one of the things that's been noted today is that there are a number of people who do feel that this sign has iconic value. I think that there's also evidence that has been presented by us previously that there are other members of the community who do not feel it has iconic value. I'm not sure that we're ever going to be able to get to the bottom of that, but I think for the purpose of your analysis that we can assume for the sake of argument that there may be some iconic value. So moving on to the next step in the analysis, assuming that there is such value, then we have to talk about the preservation of the sign itself in accordance with this Secretary of the Interior guidelines. So once you start talking about that preservation, the challenges, it notes, are not for the most part technical, and it talks about the fact that there are several community goals that often appear to conflict: retaining diverse elements from the past, encouraging artistic expression in new signs, reconciling business requirements with preservation. So if we get to the point of having to talk about preservation, then what needs to happen is that you talk in accordance with the procedure and the outline here in this brief, is to talk about maintaining and repairing the sign, but also reusing the historic sign if the building changes hands and if that is possible. I would argue that here, the sign repair, in terms of any repair of the sign, that the sign, along with the rest of the building, is in visible disrepair. I think that was evident on the site walk the other day. Your own master plan indicates that since 2008, the building has fallen into visible disrepair. So there's really no question that this is in very disrepaired. So in terms of maintaining it, and I'm going to let David and Jay, they're the experts on this, they can speak to this, but repairing that sign, contrary to what was indicated earlier in some of the other comments, would be very extensive and very costly, and it would be very costly to support the portions of the building that would be required to hold that sign in place. Again, I'm not going to say anything further on the details about that, but I just want to state for the record that it is simply not accurate to just slough off the cost of the repair of this, and both of the sign and of the supporting structure. And I would also add, and again, I'll let them speak to that, but the cost simply of that element of the construction is considerable in relationship to the entire cost of the project itself. So those things have to be borne in mind by the commission in the same way that they're bearing in mind the comments that we heard about the iconic value. One can't be considered without the other. So moving on to the second element of what the Secretary of Interior talks about, which is the reuse of a sign if there's a change in ownership, and reuse if that is possible. So let me point out a couple of things that indicates that the reuse of the sign is not possible. Even if it is repaired, it will interfere with our proposed use of the second floor. I understand and appreciate some of the comments that were made earlier, but I would respectfully disagree with those. Again, I'll let David and Jay speak to that, but it is going to block the view of the second floor. And that could interfere with our ability to create residential condominiums up there. And we don't know, frankly, at this point, who our residential market is going to be. We don't know who the retail market is going to be. So I think that it is premature, way premature, to start talking about and making conclusory statements about the fact that this sign could be repaired and reused seamlessly in terms of any kind of a marketing scheme that we have. Because frankly, we don't have one at this point. We don't know precisely who the tenants are going to be, and we want to have flexibility in order to be able to maximize the development of this property and make it viable for us so that we can redevelop it and invest in it. One of the other points that's referenced in the Secretary of Interior's comments is to bring, if it's not possible to keep the sign outside, to bring it inside. You've been in the lobby. It's too big. It's too big for the lobby. We can't bring it inside. So the final suggestion that the guidelines offer, when all of those other options are not possible, is to donate it. And so that is what we are proposing to do as this in consistent with the guidelines. And I appreciate, frankly, the comments that were made earlier by one of the, I think it was Pam, by one of the commission members. I don't think that was premature. I think it was simply a comment indicating that was an available option. And so I think that with that, I would suggest, and again, I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over briefly to David and Jay, because I think that they're in a better position, and this would be a nice point at which they can jump in to the extent that they want to, and talk about the cost of the repair, the relationship between the possible reuse of the sign and their vision of how this building is going to be used. So, David and Jay, do you want to make any comments at this point?
Hey, Sharon, this is David. I'd sort of like to echo all that you have said. I think as a developer, it's very disappointing for me anyway to come to this meeting tonight. You essentially gave us our marching orders at the last meeting. You all but approved the changes we had recommended to or proposed to the marquee with the new canopy. So we pretty much took that off the table and focused on the other matters that you had requested additional detail on. The cost of repairing that marquee or restoring that marquee is going to be well in excess of $200,000. I think that's a tremendous amount of money that we could spend elsewhere on a high-risk project.
David, you also want to address some of the issues that I mentioned about the use of the second floor and the potential reuse of the marquee for advertising purposes?
Yes, there's just no doubt about it. The marquee, as it is going to block the views out of those for two condominiums at least. The viability of this project is in the sale of those units. We need to keep that, it needs to be open to the widest possible market. And I think by blocking those views, we're definitely limiting the potential market.
I'd like to just jump in there. I mean, I don't know if, I echo Dave's statements. I mean, we went through all this in really good faith. I thought we were being good stewards, accepting the fact that the IOCA is very well known. We went in, we saved elements of the actual building while still bringing design elements in from the original building. And quite honestly, the design and the scale of it, personally, we believe looks better. That's everyone's personal preference. In terms of the marquee itself on there, I thought we'd move past that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things you can run down. So you keep the marquee, okay, we got to keep the message board. Are we going to be told what we need to post on there? I mean, we brought everyone through on that walkthrough. It's obvious there's structural issues with that marquee. There's a 16-inch piece of plate holding that thing up, and it's pulling on the front of the building. We've had engineers look at it. It's not a good situation.
It's 9 o'clock.
And the reality is the viability of a project like this that we stepped up to actually take on, where it's been sitting around since 2008, when there's been, everyone knows it's been sale since 2008. We step in, we're willing to, invest millions of dollars into renovating this building that is not even near code to, actually help the downtown come back. I mean, that's a black hole in the middle of town. We're offering, doing retail space, restaurant space, try to bring it back up and some vibrance down there. And in terms of, it's a little bit of whiplash. We thought we were supposed to pick off certain things to come back and be back to redesign from something that we thought we've already done a really good job working with this board to move on to. Because there's a little social media frenzy or what have you might be going on. We can't operate in that realm. We work on numbers. We work on being good stewards of a building that we like to buy older buildings and renovate them, not because we bastardize them. It's because we like to bring life back to old buildings. This building has been sitting around for far too long. It's in very much disrepair. And, you know, it's just in terms of it all comes down to economics at the end of the day. If the economics don't work, this project may not work. So that's just how it kind of shakes out. You know, we're saving the old sign. We're making it look like the old building. You know, I think it's a nice blend of what it was and what it could be. And, you know, looking back to what it was, I mean, I think our design team did a great job on it personally. But, I mean, that's open to interpretation, I guess, now. So
I think you did a wonderful job.
So I just want to take a minute to speak to something specifically that the legal counsel for the applicant and the owners have talked about in terms of our second work session and talking about thinking that you had some type of pre-approval to go ahead with removing the marquee. The question was raised, do we have can we proceed without going back to the drawing board on the concept of our design? And I was very specific, and you can go back to the notes and please read them, to say that we are not using any binding language, and we were not accepting or approving the application at that time. So the fact that we're here now as a third public hearing, and this is one where we're hoping to come to a decision, this is really the meat of where the decisions will be made, and there was absolutely no binding decisions that were made in previous meetings. I want to be very, very clear about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't disagree with you. I'm looking at the minutes in front of me, and you're correct. You didn't say that you were making a decision and that a decision would be made, and you indicated the decision would be made at the next meeting. All I was trying to draw attention to, and I think it is very clear from the minutes, is that it seemed that we did get confirmation that the conceptual design seemed to be appropriate to the board, and that we were not being instructed to go back to the drawing board, quote unquote, to deal with any major design issues. And that I'm reading from the minutes precisely. So I think in some respects, we're both saying somewhat similar things. You did not, in fact, indicate that you were making a decision that evening, but I think it is very clear from these minutes that you directed us to bring back discrete pieces of information, and that you indicated that it was not necessary for us to go back to the drawing board on the major design issues.
Yes, my specific language was you don't have to go back to the drawing board. We didn't say specifically that we are past the issue of the marquee. I raised questions and concerns in the work session number 2. They were raised in the first work session number 1. That was still a topic that was being debated and expressly written about. The items that we asked you to come back with were for a completion of the application so that we can make a motion to accept the application as complete, so we had the information to vote on a approval or denial of the appropriateness. So that as clarification just needed to be stated. I'm going to go back to allowing serve bottle for attendees. There is 2 hands raised. Richard Carr, if you would like to speak, please state your name, your current residence, and your reason for speaking tonight.
Yes, my name is Richard Carr. I live at 4 Cross Road in Exeter. I've been a resident for 34 years here. And,
okay, go ahead.
And I would like to talk to the comments made, why are we town members maybe finally speaking up tonight? Well, one, if you remember, you've had a little bit going on around us, I think, these last few months. And back in May, we were certainly in the thick of it. And maybe we should have been more up to date on what was going on in the town. But I think it's the idea of what was going to happen with the marquee has just become much more well-known in the last month or 2. And that's when you've seen people step up. Back in May, I had no idea that was even being thought of. We heard about the developer coming in, and we're excited about that and excited about much of what they're proposing. But at that point, we didn't know about the marquee, and it becoming clear that was going to be affected that's if you notice, everybody is speaking to that and that alone, nothing else about the project. I didn't hear anybody say anything about trying to control what they put on there, that they certainly should have the most say if they're the owners. I don't know if the Historical Society should have some say on that too, where it's part of the ambiance of the town. But it's just, I think what people are saying over and over again, just what an important piece. And I don't think where you aren't residents of the town, can't quite realize how you become attached to something and what it becomes part of you and it becomes part of where you live. And I don't think you can appreciate that. I think if you heard everybody, that's what people were speaking to, that it has touched people for now a long, long time, and it's touched all of us and it's become part of us. And the idea of losing that. So I understand this in economic realities. 200,000 sounds, you can throw numbers around. That sounds a little excessive, but I'm not a builder, so maybe you know that better than I won with, maybe we could do a fundraiser and help you if that's one of your main concerns. Maybe that could be addressed. There has been some help around that before and interest, and obviously there's a number of people, and maybe we could certainly come up with some innovative ways to help you if the costs are prohibitive to address that, I believe, or at least give us all a chance to do that at least. And then if we fall short, I guess, then again, but I think from a historical point of view and given what your purpose is, I think you very much probably resonate with what you heard again and again from town members, former town members, families, that it's just a special part. And I'm excited about the parts you are doing, but very saddened with the idea of that particular piece having to go. And, these days there's some interesting, I understand somebody living there, but I think my daughter even spoke to how it could be something that some probably apartment owners would really relish as well. Can't know that for sure. And I understand your concerns of it somehow maybe limiting the sale, but I wonder if there could be some creative ways to keep it, but not somehow interfere with the residents' views. Usually there are ways to do that. There also might be ways when we have some talented, skillful engineering or electrician people who might be able to as well come up with ways to cut some of the costs to such a thing. So I think the main thing, what you speaking to why we're stepping up now is because it's clear that we could lose something precious to us. And obviously we don't want to lose that easily. And I think everybody was speaking to what a mistake it would end up being for a great many people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Myreed Carr, you have your hand up. And you've spoke once before, and we allowed you to speak, so go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry, I think I mispronounced your first name.
Sorry. So my name is Myreed Carr, and sorry, one second, getting rid of the echo. So again,
if you could maybe mute your computer.
The fact that all this has been going on while the quarantine and shutdown has been happening, which has limited the spread of information on this issue. Had the town meetings been held in person and not through Zoom, I think also you'd see more people involved in the town meeting. I know that I wasn't aware that there was a second meeting about this. I only knew about the first one after it had already happened, unfortunately. And it is a point. This is very important to our town and to the people that live here. And I honestly, again, and I do question that number of 200,000. I'm not sure. From what I have heard about how much repair needs to be done, it is not so much structural as perhaps replacing the lights with LED that's more environmentally friendly and saves on energy costs, and fixing some of the plastic paneling. But again, I can't speak for that for sure. It's only what I've heard. And it's a very important part of our town. And it's upsetting that this is all happening when we can't speak in person about this and we have to do it so remotely. But the fact that there's so many people that care and it has been so remote communicating about it, I think really speaks to what the marquee means to the residents of this town and former residents of this town. And I hope that you remember that when you vote. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Lori, you have your hand raised. We have previously passed a motion to allow Lori to speak. So Lori, go ahead for a rebuttal.
Yes, hi. The biggest reason why I did not attend the second meeting was because my mother had a cardiac emergency and she almost died. So I was unable to attend it. And when I watched it, I nearly shot through the roof, to be honest with you. I was having heart palpitations because the thought of this getting so far, and I hadn't been able to speak. And I echo what the cars just said when they said that, gosh, we've been a little preoccupied right now with COVID-19 and with all of this tumultuous social fabric ripping all around us, all around the country, all around the world. So, it's not been a great time for information to be disseminated about this situation. And look at all the support we've gotten, once we were able to get the information out. I want to speak very strongly about the fact that there are limitless possibilities for fundraising. I have somebody on my team who she's an expert at it. We also have a couple celebrity possibilities involved that could help us out. And I severely question the 200,000. I would want to see an independent person, maybe hired by the HDC to assign experts such as Portsmouth Sign, who did the Yoken sign. I mean, somebody who has an interest in vintage signs to be able to go out and assess the marquee and decide what really needs to be done. I am the last civilian who was not connected to an owner who was up at that marquee. And I am telling you, the giant IOKA on those sides, were not wobbly when I was up there last in 2013. And mostly it's just that surface damage with the neon that was broken in the hailstorm in maybe 2007, it was 6 or 7. And then there are, the ghastly, plastic white paneling that's not even historic. That can be replaced. That was, that used to be smoky glass at one time. So that can be replaced. So the main issues are dents and dings and renovation, but fundraising is absolutely possible to help the owners with this. Also, I wanted to, there was one other point that I wanted to make about the fact that nobody has stepped up since 2008. First of all, the building was closed at the end of December. I was there at the very last movie ever shown at the IOCA with my son, and that happened around Christmas time. So we're not talking all of 08. The building became vacant right after that. So it was more like 2009. My son and I were involved with 3 incarnations of passionate efforts to restore the IOCA Theater. And most of those came under the Exeter Theater Company, but if you also recall, there was a man from Hollywood, Mark Marai, who now lives in Bedford, who had an amazing plan. He had focus groups all over town who tried to restore it. Also, the Exeter Theater Company, they fought hard. We raised over 1,300 memberships, people paying for these memberships were people's money. We lost a lot of money. I lost a few $100s in this as a single parent. People were willing to pay for the IOCA before it even opened. And when we presented those memberships to the previous owner, I am not going to get into the politics of it because that's not important. He rejected those memberships and wanted us to raise other money. I don't know the whole piece of that because I wasn't privy, but please do not say that nobody stepped up. There was an overwhelming community response. There were local businesses, and it went all over the country. We had people from Arizona sending money. So the community has loved the IOCA. We love the marquee, and we will help with fundraising. We're not just asking the new owners to do this all themselves. We will help in any way possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. One piece that I want to just talk about as it pertains to specifically our guidelines. Our guidelines on page 01-4 are the guidelines for the HDC's decisions for alterations to existing buildings. When reviewing a proposed project for alteration to a historic building, the HDC's review is guided by the principles contained in the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and more specifically, the standards for rehabilitation. The standards for rehabilitation provide the property owners and the tenants common sense guidelines to allow the sensitive contemporary uses for their sites while retaining the architectural and cultural heritage. In reviewing projects, the HDC encourages sensitive rehabilitation involving the least amount of intervention or change as identified in the following guidelines. The most important bullet below is identified by alterations and additions. Alterations and additions are sometimes needed to ensure that the continued use of the building. An alteration involves returning a building to its useful condition while saving those parts that represent its historical, architectural, or cultural significance. It is important that the alterations do not radically alter, obscure, destroy character, defining spaces, materials, features, or finishes. In addition, I'm not going to read that. I'm talking about in addition to the structure. Furthermore, under alterations and renovations, that is talking about an adaptive reuse. What I believe that I'm getting to on this is that the IGOCA sign and the marquee is a character defining element of Exeter as a community. And I did state this and talk about preservation of this sign and the signboard and the marquee and the letters all together in one in the last meeting in the work session number 2. I don't believe that an adaptive reuse of this building turning into commercial space or residential space of apartments is deterred in any way by having the marquee remain. I don't believe that it prevents that use of the building at all. And furthermore, removing of the marquee, removing of the letter of that off the building is a demolition of a historic element. And demolition of a historic resource is called out in our guidelines on 07-10. Demolition of historic resources. Once resources or buildings that contribute to the heritage of the community are destroyed, they cannot be replaced. The demolition of all or portions of the resources on the properties or within a historic area are considered to be a drastic action since it alters the character of the streetscape, surrounding buildings, and the demolition site. Doug was getting to this earlier when he was talking about coming into the town and that sign being a welcoming into the town. I 100% agree that the removal of the marquee off the building will radically alter the streetscape. And therefore, continuing to read in our guidelines, this could represent a loss of an educational resource for the community, whether it is a building that was an example of a past construction technique or has associations with a significant individual or events in the town's history. I think we just heard evidence of the people that spoke in favor of keeping this in the preservation, that this marquee definitely resonates with people in this community, with significant events of the individuals of themselves, but also with the town's history. As a result, continuing to read, as a result, demolition of historically or architecturally significant buildings or structures is rarely considered to be an appropriate option and is strongly discouraged by the HDC. And that's directly from our guidelines. So in my opinion, coming down and continuing to read under that section, the HDC discourages demolition of a historical or architecturally significant building or structure that does not pose an immediate health or safety hazard. So during the site walk that we went out there, we did look at the building. We did look at the marquee, its current connection to the building. I did look down the face of the building, of the brick itself, and its separation off the building. It doesn't appear to be hanging off the building in any way, other than the large chain that's keeping it in place right now. What we did see was that the drain that drains any rainwater or snow that goes on top of that marquee had come down, is still in place, and there was debris that was in the clean out, but the clean out cap had been removed, and that's why it was leaking out of that portion. If that clean out cap had been replaced, it would drain as it should normally. I don't believe that it causes a immediate danger to public safety, and therefore I believe that if we move to accept the demolition of that marquee or the letters, that we are in conflict with our HDC guidelines. That's reading from our materials, and that's the conclusion that I've come to. I am only one voice on this commission. I certainly don't have the power to move anything. I wanted to state that as it relates specifically to the information that we're guided by and our recommendations as the HDC. With that, I'm going to open it back up to our commission members to please.
Mr. Chairman, is the public hearing closed? I'd like to be able to confer with my team to see if we want to say anything else.
The public hearing is not yet closed. Okay. We have not done that. We would do that after we would accept the application.
Okay, fine.
So I'm asking commission members right now if they have any additional comments or questions or need any other information to be able to accept the application, to move to accept the application. Okay. So go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I have a couple of things, and this is for my fellow commission members as well as the public that is watching, and for the applicant, that we make our decisions based on the appropriateness of the treatment, not on how much we like something or, it's nice, it looks good, but the appropriateness of the treatment of the entire project. Somebody talked about an independent review for the marquee structure. I believe in our zoning ordinance, the HDC is not provided with that authority, but the Demolition Review Committee is. And this is an appurtenance that I believe the Demolition Review Committee should have had an opportunity to weigh in, because a lot of this discussion may have been shorter. They look at buildings and large elements that are proposed to be demolished. It's not a regulatory board. They just give advice, but could have worked with the owners and our commission for a creative solution. Okay, we know it's a lost cause, or whatever they would have deemed. And so I'm a little disappointed in that process, and I'm not going to lay that onto the property owner developers. Somewhere in the process, the Demolition Review Committee often gets left out. So this is not a first. what else did I have? I also wanted to ask, and this is, you don't have to answer it because it's not really pertinent to our decision, so maybe it's more of a recommendation. There are a couple different tax incentives that can be taken advantage of on this project, given it's in the HDC and you're bringing in new business and residences. And one is had been adopted by the town. That's the RSA 79E, which you apply to the select board, give your reasons for why. And if you know how it works, the value of your property remains the same for a certain amount of time that the select board provides or approves of. And then after all your work is done, and those years go by, and it comes back to the new value of the improved building. So that could be attractive in regards to working on the marquee. The other is a federal tax incentive, but what comes with that one is sticking even closer to the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines, because it's actually in the Code of Federal Regulation. There are stipulations about the preservation of an historic property if you want to take advantage of those tax incentives. I feel like that we have, I shouldn't say feel like, we have gone through a lot of process, and I appreciate the work that's gone back and forth. I think that a lot of the treatment is appropriate for that building, given what you're using, the questions that you answered for us, and given that the new use needs change. However, I am struggling with the appropriateness of removing the marquee, partially because since the first meeting, we have gotten a lot more public testimony. And so I don't think that I was committed to saying, yes, take the marquee off. But I've heard a lot of testimony. I have to tell you, the letter from the Division of Historical Resources and from the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance made me think deeply about the choice of removing or maintaining. Did you get a copy of that letter before tonight, or had you seen it before tonight?
We, as commission members, received it digitally.
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking the developers and
Yes, we did.
Okay. Just want to be sure we weren't talking about something out of the blue for you. Those were strong arguments to me. So I'm going to leave it right there so I can hear from the other commission members. But I feel like some of the arguments that have been made about the appropriateness of preserving, or has it gone beyond its value for being an appropriate treatment to keep it, can be argued either way from the same documents. So I'd like to hear from the other members.
Okay. Go ahead, Curtis.
I refer back to the minutes from our June, I believe it was 18th meeting. And I had stated then about the form of the awnings and about the placement of the freestanding letters in that meeting. And I feel that this is something that provides concession to the historic form in that we can move forward. For me, I feel the signboard isn't relevant to a residential building, but that we need to pay respect to the historic forms that are there. And I think that the current design isn't doing that.
Okay. Gwen?
I don't have a lot to add to what has already been said. I totally agree with Julie that receiving the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance letter and the New Hampshire Division of Historic Resources letter, combined with the testimony that's been delivered tonight, has really made me stop and think. And of course, our design guidelines as well. I think this is a talented group of architects, and I think that with some creativity, clearly they have that, and they're committed to doing a wonderful job on this building. I think that they'll be able to, if it comes down to keeping the marquee, I feel that they would be able to do it justice and create a building that is stunning, and it's already a focal point of our town. I think it could be even more of a focal point. And I love that the community is, it sounds like, willing to step up and help in this process and make it a community effort and make this a project that we can all be proud of. I think that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Doug?
As I said, I'm really torn with this. This is a tough decision for me, but I think that Patrick and Curtis have convinced me. I'm naturally a little less sympathetic to keeping old things around that aren't useful, but I think in this case, it really is useful in an urban design sense as an orientation device for downtown, and that's probably my real interest. I think there's a lot of other ways that could have been done, but there's such a strong feeling in this community that that particular piece of metal is worth keeping rather than the form of the metal. I've become much more sympathetic to the idea of trying to keep as much as we can of the existing sign. The sign board itself, I think it's pretty big, and it is a burden. It would be a burden for the owners of the building to have to maintain that, and that's certainly something that could benefit from some community group to make use of, or someone even mentioned being able to sell advertising. But I personally, I could live without this message board and just maintain some sense of the existing letter. I'm confused about what is the marquee and what is the signboard, but I guess I looked it up in the dictionary and it's not clear to me still. Anyhow, that's where I stand. I'm leaning towards saying, yeah, please try and keep that sign. And in terms of the cost, I'm comparing it to, I have some friends who collect old cars. They find these old junkers in the woods or in a lake, and they're all rusted, and they can restore them. It just takes money. And I'm not sure if you include some kind of a structural support for it that will comply with the new requirements for hurricane wind loads, seismic loads, and so on, that $200,000 doesn't sound so impossible to me. And of course, a lot of it depends on how well that restoration is done, what level of quality, what kind of finish it's done. And so the actual cost, I think, is a little bit hard to define. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, for clarity, I just wanted to state that when I refer to the signboard, I'm referring to the backlit piece that has removable letters.
Okay, thank you. Pam, go ahead. You're on mute, Pam.
There we go. How's that?
That's better.
Okay. Well, I am just terrified that we're going to scare away these developers. As you all know, this building has been derelict for a very long time. You probably also know that other people have made gestures toward buying it and been turned down. So here is someone who was accepted and has stepped up and has done an incredible amount of work. So God bless them. Let's not scare them off. I do not like being, pressured by a mob to vote one way or another. Although this is clearly very heartfelt and that there is a lot of sentiment on keeping this. I honestly don't. I have read and reread those guidelines, and I agree with Julie. I think it can go one way or another. And I don't want to tell these people, yes, you must keep the marquee. Clearly, if they could afford to, it would make everybody happy. But that's how I feel. Yeah.
Okay. So that was asking all the commission members if they needed any additional information to move forward with a motion to accept the application as enough information to then move towards a decision. Didn't sound like anyone needed anything else. There were more comments about the marquee itself. So at this point, I'm going to let the applicants speak because I would like to call for a motion to accept the application as complete.
Mr. Chairman, unless my clients instruct me otherwise, I do not believe we have anything else to add.
Okay. All right. May I have a motion to accept the application as complete?
Move to accept.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Pam moved, Gwen seconded, and by roll call, in favor of accepting the application as complete, Julie?
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. So the application has been accepted, that we have enough information to move towards a decision. At this point, the public hearing is closed. So no additional comments from the public, but within the commission members themselves, any other further discussion that needs to happen, moving towards deciding about making a motion for approval or denial of the appropriateness of this application. And you can certainly ask questions of the applicants to fill in any blanks or any gaps at this point. So I will go through the commission members again. Julie?
Which thing are you asking me?
I'm asking for any other discussion that's needed before I call for a motion to approve or deny this
All right,
certificate appropriateness.
I do have one question. We have the application before us with a design that's been presented to us.
That's correct.
Well, I'm just wondering if there is can we put a condition on it if we go to approve?
We certainly have done that before. It's on our certificate of appropriateness to be approved with conditions. So if there's something that you'd like to float as a discussion item right now as a condition of a denial or approval, please do so.
Okay. Well, I think that it would be. I think it would be appropriate to try the demolition review once more, and I'll tell you that's not like wait till next month kind of thing. It's I think they have 7 days to respond to a request and turn it around within 7 business days, I think.
7 working days.
Yeah. Just to feel it out a little bit more, it's a different set of eyes. A couple of architects involved there too. And, it's part of the process that we should have heard about. But that's all it is. I'd really like to see the Demolition Review Committee go through it.
You'd like the Demolition Review Committee to specifically review the demolition of the marquee?
Yeah.
Okay, as proposed in the current application?
Yes.
Okay. Any commission members want to discuss that as a potential option?
I'm trying to figure out how to raise my hand on this thing.
You can just speak.
Okay. I'm just wanting to try and isolate this issue of the marquee. And I know that developers are really, I'd like to cut them loose to let them work on the project and somehow isolate that as a separate project and see if there's any community interest in subsidizing it or if there's grants or other sources of money. I know it's not just an issue of money, it's an issue of function, but I hate to hold this whole thing up just for this one issue. And I thought that might be one possibility of getting us to bed tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Doug's comments that I would like this to move forward, but I'm not in favor of the design of the current awnings over the door and the current placement of the IOCA on the side of the building with a barn light on it. I find it's inappropriate.
Okay, so are you asking then to have potentially a motion that is a condition of removing the signage and the marquee from the current application?
That's difficult because I'm asking for a redesign condition, and that would mean they would be coming back here next month for another review. So that's where I find the conditional approval difficult.
Okay. You stumped me. I'm not sure how to proceed with that train of thought either. Gwen, can you weigh in on the current discussion in terms of conditional approval or asking for a redesign of marquee and signage? Or please go ahead.
I wish I had a good answer too. I like having the option of kind of removing that component from the rest of the building, so that they could keep moving forward. I don't know how to work it. I just don't have any great ideas about that. I just lost my train of thought, but I know. I think having the demolition review would be helpful. And I don't know how that fits in with this process either. I don't know if that would hold it up until, Julie, you can probably answer that. Would they come back? Would they come back next month with the outcome of that? What would the timeline be? I know you said it had to be within 7 days, but after that, what would happen?
Well, it depends on how the motion is made tonight. If the motion is made that we find the building treatment appropriate and give a condition that the applicant go through a demolition review, the answer would be very, very short. But if the condition is if the condition is that this commission needs to hear their response, I don't know.
Then it's next month. We're going to get ourselves in trouble by trying to split things one way or the other. I think that the applicants have been patient in terms of working with us in terms of through 2 work sessions. The indication was from the last work session is we were going to work towards a decision tonight, if possible, to let them keep moving and go forward. So I don't know at this point, by separating out that as a specific element away from the rest of the application, I think it's just going to cause, they might as well come back next month after we have a demolition review look at it. I don't think it's piecemeal.
No, I agree. It was just more of a statement of irritation, not on the developer's fault. So no, I agree. It's not a separate issue that we want to weigh in on.
Okay, Pam, any comments, questions about how to proceed towards a motion or conditional motion tonight to try to come to a decision?
I don't think that there's any way we can make a conditional motion tonight without getting us into more trouble down the line than we're in already. Oh dear.
Okay.
My brain has just stopped. It's 9:45.
Yeah, so to try to keep this moving along as much as possible, I'm going to say there's 2 options on the table. One is calling for a motion that is conditional, that approves the application, except not allowing the marquee to be removed. That would be a conditional motion. The second would be a motion for the approval of the project as shown. I think those are our 2 options tonight.
So that would be to move to accept certain things and to postpone the approval, or to...
It's not a postponement. It would not be a postponement.
The two choices that Patrick has suggested are just to find the treatment of the building appropriate and go right ahead, and the developers go right ahead and do their work. The other one is to find the treatment appropriate, but conditionally in that the marquee remains.
Correct. So the third option is to find that the application itself is not appropriate.
Right.
Which would be the entirety of the application. Those are the 3 options.
Well, let me see. If there's no more discussion about what you want to look at or what you want to see, I'm going to make a stab at a motion.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the project as appropriate treatment of the building with the condition that the marquee remain.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Doug seconds. By roll call, this is for the approval of the motion, which is conditional, approving the application as stated with the condition that the marquee remains in place. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Curtis?
No.
Pam?
No.
All right. The commission has come back 3-2. So the motion passes.
Mr. Chair, you didn't vote, did you?
I did not, but I only vote in the event of a tie,
yes,
or if we do not have a quorum.
Correct.
So it is in favor of the motion passing. So that conditional motion is for the marquee to remain, and the rest of the application is approved. to be historically appropriate. Right, and that would conclude the public hearing and this application. Thank you very much for to the applicants and commission members. I know it's very late. Do appreciate you hanging around with us. And we're going to move on to other business if there isn't any other comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. David Curry.
Yes.
So procedurally, what are our options? And maybe Sharon can chime in on this as well, just so that I understand as developers what our options are going forward.
Your options going forward are to accept what we have decided tonight as the binding agreement to keep the marquee and proceed with the rest of the development of the property. You can also appeal the decision if you choose to, and that appeal will then go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for the town of Exeter, and subsequently they will hear your arguments to try to uphold or overturn our decision tonight.
Good, thank you. That's my understanding. So I appreciate the confirmation.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to other business. First and the most important thing that I just want to get consensus from the commission members is we have a letter that was received from PEA, and it refers to the installation of temporary housing that would be used as quarantine quarters for any potential COVID-19 patients or residents or teachers or students for the school. These are going to be temporary housing, and they're going to be located in the parking lot behind St. Anthony's, in that parking lot there. I believe you have an aerial photo that shows where this is. They've issued a letter to us requesting that they do not need to come in for an application. Because they're within the historic district, they're asking for a waiver. And I asked them to submit this letter as a document that I could sign if the board so chooses, that would allow them the waiver for a formal application. Given the situation that we're in, given the request, and given the fact that they're going to be temporary housing and they do have a date as to when they would be removed, I don't think it is reasonable for us to ask for them to try to make some temporary housing that look like job site trailers a historic element for a short period of time. So I've requested this letter, and I'd like to just ask for a motion to allow me to sign this and return it to them so that they can put these on order. So may I have a motion to allow myself to sign this?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Everybody's on mute. Thank you, Julie. Roll call for approval. Julie?
Can I make one comment first?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind, just as you said earlier, that because of the pandemic, and we don't know what's going to happen. The school is reopening on schedule, and they don't have the time because of this to wait till next month to do an approval. And that would be my reason to vote for the waiver.
Okay.
So,
thank
yes.
you. All right. Thank you. Doug?
Yes, it's reasonable.
All right. Curtis?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, and I myself, yes, even though I'm not voting, was in favor of signing it. So thank you. I'll go ahead and sign that and get it back to them, allowing them to not come in for a formal application on that. Under other business, we do have the June meeting minutes. And if everyone is tired and ready for bed, I'm happy to postpone that to a further meeting. if anyone.
Mr. Chair, am I still unmuted?
Sure.
I'm not sure we should do that. I think we should actually approve or not approve tonight.
Given that the content is about the application that just went under approval, I can't disagree.
I didn't have any, the only things I had in here were not like the gist of anything we said. It was just some typos.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that I don't want to spend the time to list.
Okay, so does anyone have anything that is a correction other than a typo that would be more to the content of a comment or a question pertaining to the accuracy of the minutes?
I have one or two things, and then Mr. Chair, could I just get these to you for typos, or
that's fine.
Probably the same ones that everyone else has. But on the first page, about halfway through the page, the sentence, it says to point out, and she hopes the members have received this in their packets. I don't know. I'm assuming that it's the letter signed by 50 people that she's referring to, but it isn't clear in the sentence, and it just might be good to clarify that. So it's the word "this" that is.
That would have been the letters, the letter that was signed in favor of allowing the developers to remove the marquee.
Okay. Could that be specified just so it's clear?
Yeah, let's do that. This received the letter of support to remove the marquee. Okay.
Actually, that's the only thing I had. All the others are typos.
All right, fantastic. Anyone else?
I have a technical comment on page 3, bottom of the page, where it mentions the ICC. It should be the IECC, is the Energy Conservation Code.
IECC, got it.
Yeah, I think that might be in there twice.
Yeah, it's twice.
Okay, yep, see it again. IECC. Okay, great, thank you. Any others?
That's it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the meeting minutes of June 18th, 2020 as amended with minor typographical errors attended to.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I should say, let me amend that to as amended, and also minor grammatical changes corrected.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Pam, second. Roll call. Julie?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Doug? I assume Doug, yes.
Just nod.
Curtis?
Yes.
All right, that's enough. Myself, yes. That's a quorum. So, yes, they are approved as amended and typos. Okay. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's all that we had on the agenda.
Yep, it is. That's all I planned on.
Yeah. The only other piece was the State Commission for Coastal Resilience and Economic Development Program, but we can leave that. So I sincerely thank you, Commission members, for a very difficult last 3 meetings and a very difficult decision tonight. I think that we performed very professionally, and I think that we protected ourselves and the town most appropriately with our arguments, questions, and comments, and ultimately our decision. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And with that, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Everyone likes to second that one. All right. Thank you. And we will adjourn.
Yay.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.